Now look at how we go from a short-term disequilibrium to the medium-run equilibrium in our ISLM-PC model. And here we know the way we go from short-term disequilibrium to medium-run equilibrium is through the central bank adjusting the interest rate. So now what happens is, let's say, suppose the economy is currently operating at point A, where output, which is in this case YA, is above the potential level of output YN. So we have a positive output gap. And according to our Phillips curve, this will cause an increase in inflation above the central bank's target, because you can see that at the level of output YA, pi minus pi bar is positive, so pi is greater than pi bar. And the economic intuition behind this, we've already looked at before when we discussed the Phillips curve. So here we're just saying, suppose the economy is currently operating at point A, where output is above the potential level, and hence by the Phillips curve, inflation is above the target, as we can see here. So this is our short-term disequilibrium. Now let's look at the central bank's reaction to it. The central bank will intervene because here we have a positive output gap, right? The idea is here is we have a positive output gap, which results in inflation above the target. So you want to essentially bring output back to natural level so that inflation goes back to target, right? You want to go from YA to YN so that pi minus pi bar is no longer positive, but pi minus pi bar is zero, so that pi goes back to pi bar, right? So because we have a positive output gap where output is above potential and hence inflation is above target, so the goal is to bring YA back to YN so that pi goes back to pi bar. So to achieve this, the central bank will intervene by increasing the real interest rate, which will shift our LM curve upwards until Y decreases back to YN. That was the goal, right? So YA goes to YN, and this is like you can see a movement up the IS curve. And as YA goes back to YN, pi will go back to pi bar, movement down the Phillips curve. And this will help us achieve point A prime, where output is at the natural level, and in pi minus pi bar is zero, which means that pi is equal to pi bar. Right, so we achieve point A prime, where our IS intersects the new LM curve at YN, right? So how do you know, how will you plot this? You will plot it in such a way that the central bank will increase the real interest rate, shifting the LM curve upwards. And your new LM curve should intersect the IS curve at YN, right? So that now we are at the point where Y is YN and pi is pi bar. So what happened is we started at point A, we had a positive output gap, Y is greater than YN, and which resulted in inflation being above target. So now the central bank, what it will do is it basically wants YA to go back to YN so that pi goes back to pi bar. So for that, it will increase the real interest rate, which will shift the LM curve upwards. And how do you know where will you plot the new LM curve? You will plot it where it intersects your IS curve at YN. So you will plot the new LM curve such that it intersects the IS curve at YN, right? So the LM curve will shift upwards until Y goes back to YN. Pi goes back to pi bar, which is point A prime, where the new LM curve intersects the IS curve at YN. Now, why did the central bank react though? Let's look at the reason behind that too. We know if the central bank does not react, inflation expectations will, if the central bank does not react and let inflation deviate from target for too long. If you let this situation continue for too long, that pi is greater than pi bar, inflation expectations will de-anchor. People will no longer expect inflation to be pi bar because they can see that inflation is deviating from its target for too long. Inflation expectations will de-anchor. Wage setters will start expecting higher inflation, and inflation would keep on rising, which will not be sustainable. So the central bank will react to bring Y back to YN, so the pi goes back to pi bar, and it will do that through an increase in real interest rate, which will shift the LM curve upwards. And how do you know where to plot the new LM curve? You will plot it where it intersects your IS curve at YN. So the economy finally settles at a point in the medium and equilibrium where Y is YN, output is at potential, which means that unemployment is at the natural rate, pi is equal to pi bar, and the real interest rate is at its neutral or natural level. Neutral or natural real interest rate is the one associated with natural rate of unemployment or natural level of output.